Hello everybody, my name is Bryan Cogman, and I'm co-producer for Season 4 of Game of Thrones, and I wrote this episode.
And my name is Alik Sakharov. I was lucky enough to work with Bryan in capacity of a director.
Yes, it was our second collaboration as writer-director for the show. We worked together, of course, on Season 2 and Episode 203. And it was such a joy, continues to be a joy to work with Alik. As much as anyone who directs for our show, he's so fantastic at those wonderful, nuanced, small moments where he captures just the essence of a character and really brings the best out in the actors. So it's always so much, such a joy to work with him, and especially on a script of mine.
It's all in the script. It's all in the script, baby.
It's the Mutual Admiration Society here over the credits.
I know.
Hey, there's my name. Keen-eyed viewers will notice that my sigil is a vomiting maester. That was a little joke from my beloved bosses, David Benioff and Dan Weiss. Because early on when I was their assistant, I had a little too much to, let's just say I consumed a bit too much at a rap party, and they witnessed the next morning's
I see.
the result. So that was their little nod to me. Thanks a lot, guys.
Fun to see some new stuff going on here and the opening credits.
Oh, that's true. We had the Iron Bank of Braavos there on the map, which,
right.
Of course, we go to Braavos in this episode.
And Marine?
And Marine, of course, yeah. That's the beauty of the show. It's constantly expanding. And here we go.
Oh, it's that famous shot.
Amazing shot. Of course, this is shot in a parking lot. That's the...
That's why it's so famous.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically, I mean, you start the shot in the parking lot, as Bryan said, and then you hand it off to special visual effects gurus who again outdid themselves.
Yeah,
Look at what they're doing.
Astonishing. It's funny. Someone pointed out to me that it kind of echoes that iconic shot in Lord of the Rings where they're sailing past the twin statues. Although in Game of Thrones world, you sail between a man's legs. And, look at that shot. Incredible.
Beautiful. Just camera went up in the air probably 40 feet and then just handed off to special visual effects, which they did great.
This wasn't originally the opening scene of this episode. As scripted and as shot, the opening scene was actually the Daenerys sequence. But I imagine once that shot was complete, it was clear that there was no other way to begin the episode. And I think it works quite well.
Here in Braavos. Together we were going to run 3 shiploads of the fine...
Yeah, and this particular set was only built as a half set.
That's right.
We had sort of like a full half set towards the door where the bankers enter. This is the
this is the practical
angle
set
that's
right here.
full.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And the reverse of that was actually special visual effect extension.
This was, I believe, one of the first, if not the first, completed sets that Deb Riley, our new production designer for season 4, completed. And the second I walked in on this set, I thought, okay, well, we're in good hands. She's fantastic. It was really fun to get to explore the Iron Bank. We kind of brought the storyline forward. In the books, we meet the Iron Bankers a lot later. And so that's all green screen, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Halfway through it's extension. Mm-hmm.
We meet the Iron Bankers later in the story, but we'd been teasing them for so long that David and Dan really wanted to explore this very important part of warfare, which is, of course, the money. And it's another one of those great touches that George gives you in his material. No other fantasy saga goes into how these wars are paid for.
I remember Bryan's excitement when we were casting people for the role of the banker. And then Mark Gaddis' name came up, and I went to Bryan's office and I said, so what do you think of Mark Gaddis? He's like, Mark Gaddis?
Yeah. Yeah, he's kind of my idol. I was an actor. I hopefully will be again one day. And he's a showrunner. Of course, he writes and showruns Sherlock and also Doctor Who. And yeah, he's a showrunner that runs his own show and wrote himself an amazing character part. So he's basically what I want to be when I grow up. So to have him do this little scene for us was a real thrill. And I think, Alik, it was a fun scene to rehearse, wasn't it? These three actors have such different personas, styles, ways of working, and the three of them bumping up against each other in rehearsal and, of course, in the scene was really a joy.
How many fighting men remain loyal to you?
What's wonderful is that they kind of found their beats very, very early on. And so once they found the beats, they were just playing against each other in very organic ways, like passing the ball.
And how much wheat and barley?
And of course, Stephen Delane's very measured, very, very controlled way that he gives here, it's greatly complemented by Liam, who plays Davos, and of course Mark. So there's a perfect triangle formed there. And I think they played it like an exceptional trio. I mean, it's like a really fine-tuned instrument.
Absolutely. And, Stephen is an actor of such power that he has very little to say in the scenes.
Yeah.
Stannis is a tricky character to write for because to be true to the character, you can't rely a lot on dialogue because he's not a particularly verbose man. It's not like writing for Varys or Tyrion. You have to choose when he's going to speak and be very deliberate in it. And of course, the bulk of the dialogue and the driving of the scene certainly belongs to Liam, to Davos. That said, and Alik, you picked up on this immediately, and certainly when in the shooting and the cutting of it, so much of the scene is driven just by Stannis's smoldering look and the way he's clocking Davos making the argument and clocking how the argument is having an effect on the banker. And it's just masterful.
Who's the real power in King's Landing?
But what was great about it is that because it was basically we begin to understand early in the scene that it's Davos' idea to come here, and when it's kind of going south for Stannis, he gives him the look to Davos.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I just love
you better
that
bring
one.
this home because
Yeah. Because I'm just about to leave.
yeah,
Tywin's gone.
absolutely.
And I think what Liam is doing here is incredible. Just
The problem for now.
bang on.
There's only one reliable leader left in Westeros. Stannis.
Yeah, they have a wonderful dynamic, and it's sort of echoed in life too. Stephen is very deliberate, very precise, even in rehearsal, and Liam's very gregarious and sort of, boisterous, and it's reflected in the portrayals.
Yeah.
Here we are in the Pentoshi brothel with the wonderful Lucian Masmati playing Salador San.
Yeah, he
And,
was so much fun.
He is so much fun. He's got this just Falstaffian quality that, it's hard to find many places in Game of Thrones where you can have that kind of quality. And so these Salador San scenes are always fun when we can find a place for them. We wanted to personify, we wanted to exhibit the fact that, A, the negotiation that we just saw paid off, and B, sort of get an example of the kind of transactions that Davos is now going to make. Of course, it isn't just Salador San. He's going to go throughout the Free Cities and recruit sellsword companies and smugglers and pirates and whoever he can with this new Bravosi gold. So when we decided to show that, it seemed only fitting that we bring back old Salador.
Didn't tell them that joke.
Davos. I heard you were rotting in a dungeon in Dragonstone.
Only half rotted.
And this was a pain to shoot, as I recall. Working in bathtubs is not easy.
Yeah, but he elevated the spirits.
That's true.
This is so
They
funny.
all became great friends by the end of the day.
Yeah.
When you're sitting there in a bathtub and it's not particularly warm water, you're in this, this is a soundstage in Bambridge in Northern Ireland. You're either miserable or you make the best of it.
We.
Which he did.
Once I thought this man loved me.
Yeah, it took us forever to get off first shot, I remember.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Whatever, yeah.
Well, I think we
had-
realized that they were too low in the tub. The tubs weren't really designed. They were originally designed for the bathtub scene in season 3 with Bryan and Jaime, where they're kind of sunken into the tub. And
Right.
we got there that day and thought, we're only going to see his, the top of his head. So, those kind of problems you have to solve on the day. It's par for the course in any production, certainly on this production.
You're not my friend, my friend.
I love that.
You are not my friend, my friend. That's one of my favorite. I can't take credit for that brilliant line. That's a Dan Weiss special. So props to Dan there. And now we switch gears pretty abruptly, as will often happen on Game of Thrones. And here's Yara Greyjoy, last seen in the season finale of season 3, pledging to go and get her brother back from the clutches of Ramsay Snow. Wonderful Gemma
I love
Whelan.
her performance here. Yeah, she did great here. The reading was fantastic.
Yeah, she's really fantastic. She's known primarily in the UK as a comedian who does this wonderful character, Chastity Butterworth, and this is sort of light years away from that. And this sequence is kind of fun to point out, is shot in a bunch of different locations, and then all thrown together to make it look like one area. But we're at Shane's Castle, we're at the Magramorn Quarry set, on the old Blackwater set, and the sound stages where the kennel is over, and an old estate near the castle where we used to shoot Winterfell, and it all comes together seamlessly. And that sex scene used to be actually a scene, but it kind of became part of the montage in the final edit. Now this is the old set from Blackwater that was redressed to be the Dreadfort.
And also, later on, it was redressed as Eerie Garden in episode 7.
Well, that's right. In fact, it was shot the same day, remember? You shot the Littlefinger Sansa Eerie Garden scene during the day, and then we moved up at night, and I think you got this action sequence in, what, an hour and a half or something? I mean, it was...
2 hours. Yeah, it was like 2 hours. It was crazy.
Crazy. It was...
Yeah.
We had to move like lightning speed to get it done. And did we shoot the arrival the jumping on the boats in that same night, or was... I think that might have been the same night, too.
No, it was second night, yeah.
Oh, okay. Now this is interesting. Not unlike our battle sequence in our episode in season 2, Alik. My original version was a much larger, expansive...
I love that original version, and then we had to settle for this.
No, but I think this was one of those... I was going to say, I think this is one of those happy accidents where, the production requirements, dictated that we had to scale it down and stage it in the kennel. But I actually think it ends up being so much more powerful and so much more of an interesting fight in this very confined space.
It is very interesting that we had to go for that choice. I'm still missing some stuff that could have happened in the courtyard between Ramsay.
Between Ramsay and Yara. Yeah.
And basically his troop against her troop, and then
It was a fun sequence, but there was I remember being really excited when we visited this location, and you and Dave Foreman, one of our amazing fight choreographers, kind of worked out the mechanics of this fight.
This is turning into a lovely evening.
They did great, actually.
Yeah.
Great things should be said about that stunt department. I mean, they're just fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. Especially this season. Every single episode this season, if it didn't feature, it featured at least one big fight. Most of them feature 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. I mean, we worked the hell out of them in season 4. And it's a testament to them that they're all very distinct, and fighting styles are very different. And of course, I really should mention just the amazing work that Alfie does in this episode, and this season in general.
His look is amazing.
Oh.
Yeah, just his eyes are so descriptive, and they really tell you so much more than you'd normally expect to see. And he just brings it home.
I think there are a lot of young actors that would balk at playing such a vulnerable character. There's a lot of vanity in some young actors. I don't think this is news to anybody. But Alfie, there's not a trace of it. He really is committed to fully realizing this character in all of its darkness. And here,
This we shot like in an hour.
Yeah, this was shot in an hour. It was like, really, get on the ship quick, because we're running out of time.
Let's go.
And of course, there was some confusion. Some viewers were writing me saying, why is she scared of a bunch of dogs? It isn't that she's scared of the dogs. The dogs are representative of the idea that she's not going to get out of there alive and that Ramsay's basically letting her go and sending a message. And she could either die in that kennel and end her line, or she could take her place as the heir to the Iron Islands, and she chooses the latter. And of course, that'll have repercussions for her going forward, but...
And also the way she looked at Theon and realized that, he's gone.
Yeah, there's nothing left. Exactly. This was one of the few scenes of this episode that I was not present when you shot. I was actually in Iceland working on that unit, and I was just thrilled when I saw the dailies. This is as horrifying, if not more horrifying, a scene than all of the more physical torture scenes in season 3.
Now?
They both, what Alfie is doing here, just in looks alone, you'll see it in a second, that obviously it's just, wow.
I was sitting watching this with a bunch of friends, and when he asked him to pull down the breeches, all my friends were yelling, oh no, don't show it, no.
Remember at some point I actually wanted to show it?
No, in my very original draft, I think I wrote it in, and David and Dan said, maybe we should spare the audience that. It's probably the right call. I mean, you don't need it. You see that look tells you everything you need to know, And yeah, this is sort of, this scene represents kind of a new phase for Ramsay and Reek. The physical mutilation is for the most part over, but the psychological trauma has just begun, and not only that, we're now going to start to see just what all of it was for and what the method to Ramsay's seeming madness is, and it begins a great arc for both characters, I think. This is just amazing when he hasn't been in a bath in months. Just the way Alfie plays that stage direction, and did you guys rehearse this scene, or did you have some rehearsal? Or did you just shoot it?
Initially I rehearsed it, so I just wanted to work out the beats, and this is one of the beats we found when he puts the wash rug in there and he squeezes it,
which is not scripted. This is wonderful. This is right, and he thinks he's going to be hurt.
Yeah, exactly. Puts fear of God into Theon, and look at this reaction.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and I must say that is not scripted. That was something that you all came up with, and it just added another amazing layer to the scene. And then, do you love me?
Which is great when you get to rehearse with these two wonderful actors to find those beats,
Yeah, it's no secret we have probably the most challenging schedule of any television show, and yet it's very important to our actors and to our best directors that time is found to rehearse some of these more intimate two-hander scenes.
How can it? I need you to play a role.
The show benefits from it because it's such a scattered show. We shoot it cross-boarded like a big 10-hour movie, and I think if you didn't kind of take the time with these character moments, a lot could get lost in the shuffle. Look at that glee. Ugh.
Yeah.
Here we go. This was the original opener of the episode, and this is Iceland.
And this is Iceland, yeah.
And this is I believe, the only marine scene shot in Iceland. A nightmare for you, as I recall. Right. It was very windy.
Everything that could have gone wrong that day went wrong. It was extremely windy. The machine was set up, our movie bird, which is the crane. And we've encountered some problems, and
the dragon wouldn't come out of his trailer. The diva.
Anything. So, but look at this. Everything's got fixed. Yeah.
Thankfully, if you can add a CGI dragon, your production woes are... And it turned out fantastic. The scene was sort of written again to the location. We were always going to have the dragon appear and go after this flock, but I remember the production team were scouting in Iceland and found that gorge, and David wrote me and said, I'm going to send you pictures of this gorge, and you need to write the scene as if the dragon pops up like a helicopter in an action film. And that was the idea. Speaking of great sets.
This is one of my favorite sets easily in fourth season.
Oh yeah, in the whole series for me. I just I think some people think we found it somewhere. That it's a real,
It
old
was
building
so
somewhere.
beautifully done.
It's just gorgeous, and Deb Riley and her team just outdid themselves. But no, this is on stage at the Paint Hall in Belfast.
Yeah, remember how I was like a little child with that lens coming around the set? Look
Oh,
at this
yeah,
angle,
I
look
do
at this
remember.
Angle, look at this angle. It's
one of
like,
the-
okay, let's explore all this angle.
That's one of the fun things
And
about
there they are.
working with you. You have a childlike sort of glee of the process and of storytelling, which I think I share. So we have a lot of fun together on set. Probably annoy the rest of the crew, but
Actually not. Actually, I think they enjoy it.
well, I hope
They look
so.
at us like, look at those two guys.
And
they're
yeah,
happy.
Yeah, they're having a good time.
Why don't we?
Why don't we?
But I have to give full credit to David, Morgan, and Sean.
Yes, our amazing camera operators on Dragon Crew. Yeah.
But I will see he has paid their value.
They are just, you ask them and don't have to ask them many times. They understand, they get it, they get the camera where it needs to be. And
And they get the show.
They just,
they get
Oh
the
my
aesthetic
God.
of the show.
yeah.
And yeah, you're
And
absolutely
every
right.
single,
The camera
every
operators.
single setup.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The
Sure.
camera operators are definitely the unsung heroes of this series.
Yeah. Sean Savage, David Morgan. My hat is off.
And this is a new character this season, Hizdar Zoe Lorak, played by Joel Fry, and a terrific addition to the cast. This scene was sort of a homage to Antigone and to Priam in the Iliad, sort of pleading for proper burial for the fallen dead, and the idea of your enemies being flesh and blood humans at the end of it all. And it's the first time Dany has had to sort of put a human face on this institution and the culture that she has deemed evil, and certainly deems it evil because of her own experience. But now that she has to rule this ancient culture, she finds that it's not so black and white. And it was a great challenge and a lot of fun to sort of start that arc going. These middle episodes are fun to write because they pay off a few things that have been set up earlier in the season, but they often function as beginnings for the back half of the season where everything kind of gets going. So they're the ones I generally write, and I enjoy them.
I am sorry you no longer have a father, but my treat.
Zorag's storyline only increased later on.
You'd be wise.
Yeah, Hizdar is definitely an important character going forward, as Dany stays in Meereen to see what kind of a ruler she can be. A character from the book, but we've sort of rethought him here. We aged him down and made him the son of a crucified master. Again, to sort of really throw a wrench in Dany's perception of these people.
Are still nailed to those posts, carrion for vultures, rotting in the sun.
These are long days. Sitting up on that bench and maintaining your energy is probably very hard.
Your Grace, I ask that you order these.
And the set it's probably a very interesting challenge to shoot, right, Alik? Because the actors are so far away from each other that
You sort of want to suggest that they shouldn't be close to one another, and they have to project across the space. It just creates some sort of different way of taking the words that are being emitted by one side or the other. And do you know what I mean? It's sort of, it actually accents the space itself, and you need to draw them from one another because, she's in the seat of power. I don't think they would be allowed to come near her.
Bury your father.
no, they wouldn't. And it's a challenge when you write these scenes in these ceremonial spaces because the dialogue inevitably becomes more less intimate, more presentational. And then you try to find those kind of intimate moments that sort of break that, that mold. And then, of course, you've got the other amazing set, which is just next door. It's not in this episode, but Dany's private chambers where she has more intimate kind of council meetings. And there's a different dynamic to Emilia and her performance there.
I mean, there's a sense of formality here in composition, too, suggesting
Absolutely.
that it's a very formal way of conducting business, and like this shot, for instance.
Yes, the drudgery of ruling.
Yeah.
Pedro Pascal
What an amazing actor.
as Oberyn Martell. Just an amazing jolt of energy and life for season 4 as the character is. And he just, I mean, we always loved the character, but I never dreamed he would make the impact that he did, and it's really due to Pedro. And we should mention
I
Roger.
loved how relaxed he was. When
Yeah,
time
I'm
ended.
not
Like,
giving up.
yeah,
I'm a Prince
I
of
don't
Dorne.
care.
It's actually our only small council scene this season, I believe. So I was delighted to be able to write it. The first scene I ever wrote for the show was actually the small council scene that's in my season 1 episode. That was the scene I began with. And so it was. Most of the players have changed since then. I think the only 2 left from that original small council at this point are Varys and Pycelle. So it's these are fun scenes to sort of show how the sausage is made, how the governing goes. We also have Roger Ashton Griffiths here as Mace Tyrell, who brings a wonderful comic relief to the season.
She has a company of sellswords, the Second Sons.
And in this scene, we are reminded that Jorah was spying on
Yes, a very important reminder.
Daenerys. Yeah. And now we understand that he isn't anymore.
Normand is spying on her for us.
Yes, and it was important to David and Dan. Again, when you're adapting the book series for the TV series, the requirements of storytelling are certainly different for a 4th season of a television show as opposed to a 4th or 5th book of a literary series. And keeping the worlds of Essos and Dany's storyline, keeping them connected to the Westeros storyline was important. I think it's important for the viewer to sort of remind them that this is all, everything is affecting the other thing. And Dany's storyline can feel sort of like its own isolated show, and we didn't want to do that. So to that end, the characters in Westeros in the series are a bit more aware of Dany and her goings-on than they are in the books at this point.
300 years. Armies win them.
And Tywin, at the end of this scene, takes the first step that is, of course, paid off in episode 8 with the reveal of Jorah's treachery.
Eventually, if it comes to that. Can your little birds find their way into Meereen?
Most certainly, my Lord Hand.
Yeah, and now we understand that.
Tywin's going to take steps.
Yeah.
I love this. He's very proud to be given a job.
And of course, Oberyn understands how this works.
Yes, indeed. Now, this was the last scene written for this episode. This wasn't in the original script, and we wrote it when we were I think we were already in production. And we realized that,
Oberyn?
For story purposes, Varys just didn't have quite as much to do this season, but we really missed him, and we missed those wonderful kind of two-handers between Varys and Littlefinger, where they would sort of commiserate next to the Iron Throne. So we thought, well, we have a new player in town, Oberyn Martell, both of them outsiders. So why don't we throw them together and see what happens? And
most of us live and die.
This is
in
a
the
lovely
same
scene.
corner where we were born, and
a lot of these two-handers sort of just happen that way, where we think, well, they're not so much about plot, they're about character and about theme.
Aren't princes.
We'll just start with 2 of them in a location and start writing and see what comes. And this is what came of this scene.
Please. I have an ear for accents.
I've lost my accent entirely.
I have an ear for that as well.
I think we shot this on the Monday, and then the rest of the week was the trial sequence. Is that right?
Like telling people.
Yeah.
That is correct. I think we were allotted 5 days for the entire throne room, and one.
Come to the brothel and meet her.
I think we shot 2 scenes this day.
Oh,
I
really?
don't remember actually, but yeah, it was one of the scenes. And then, I think we shot the scene and then we rehearsed the.
That's right. We rehearsed the trial.
The trial.
Because
yes.
if any scene needed rehearsal, it was that one.
Yeah.
And as we'll talk about more when we get to it, but it's its own 25-minute play essentially. There was just so much just logistically to get right even before rehearsal started. I remember when you came into my office with your diagram of the throne room and where everybody was going to be sitting and where all the angles that you planned. I mean, it was just extraordinary, the amount of preparation that the scene took. As much preparation, if not more, than our battle sequences sometimes.
It took a couple of incarnations. I mean, I had at one pass at it, I had Cersei sitting on the screen right, and then I was like, maybe it should be on screen left. And so all this give and take and back and forth, and finally we arrived at the conclusion.
Nikolaj is so...
I love this little scene, yeah.
He is so good at conveying a lifetime of experience in a look. And Peter is
Without
as well.
any words at all.
It's astonishing. And that's what comes of, people ask me what my favorite season is, and I think it's this one, if only because the actors have lived in these characters so long now that they're so fully embodied. And it's not to say you wouldn't get a moment like that from Nikolaj or Peter in season 1, of course you would, but there's just something different about them in season 4 now that they've lived with these characters for so long. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I also think they have amazing chemistry, these two.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, there's something that they do in next episode. They had a wonderful scene together in that very cell room. And my God, just the silent communication, them looking to one another, smiling. You understand the history between these two brothers that grew up together.
Yes.
Words aren't really exchanged there in those looks of that silent communication.
And it's worth reminding that, until this season, the two of them hadn't shared a scene together since the second episode of season 1. And that was only a scene. I think they maybe had 2 scenes in total. So it's a testament to just how committed they are to their characters and to their characters' history. And, if in any other show, you would be afraid to put essentially your lead actor in a prison cell for the majority of the season and have almost all his scenes be him in a prison cell talking, unless that actor is Peter Dinklage.
And then he comes in and steals the show.
Well, and then, and then you give him a showcase like this.
Boom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do hereby recuse myself from this trial. Tywin of the House Lannister, Hand of the King, Protector of the Realm.
So this was very formal arrangement, obviously, and you can see that we've played with the idea of having the testimony doc on the right side and the left side. It was the right side, left side was just playing back and forth, and then we had 3 cameras going here, obviously, and so we wanted to compose shots in such a way that all 3 cameras would play at all times. And given that Bryan was very actually instrumental in helping us find the tone in not just words, but between the words, in all these looks. Take a look at all that.
I appreciate that. It's a testament to you as well, because you're absolutely right. The life of the scene is what isn't said as much as what is said.
Right, and I remember we were talking about it, and then our discussion veered off. So what is this? I mean, and then I guess it's just a story between the Lannisters.
Did you kill King Joffrey?
No.
It's that 4 points between which we always anchor. Our cameras are always going to record those reactions. That's really just a Lannister story right here.
Yeah, it's the spine of the scene for sure. It's 40 some odd years of shared history between these 4 family members.
Exactly.
And actually, it's really the only scene the 4 of them share together. I mean, there are other scenes where they're all present or in the same location, but there's never been a scene where the 4 of them really interact, and this is the closest it comes to it. And again, you have to have actors like Lena Headey, Charles Dance, Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, and Peter Dinklage to pull that kind of thing off.
True.
But yeah, it was tremendously rewarding to write and work on this sequence. Probably the most fun I've ever had writing anything. I love the courtroom drama as a genre. I loved playing with the tropes of the courtroom drama, kind of winking at some of them, but only just enough. You didn't want it to become a spoof, You don't want it to become Law and Order, tunk, Westeros. But at the same time, you want to kind of honor that genre and the tropes. So it was a lot of fun writing that.
Yeah, I have to say that one of my favorite moments was between the setup, sitting with Peter in that dock. Sharing moments with him, and he's so funny.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, of all the people, he would just crack a joke and he just start laughing out loud. And of course, it reverberates and resonates through that big hole.
No, thank God he keeps it light. And of course, Julianne Glover, yeah.
Everyone's got such great, they play off one another so amazingly well. I mean, they have an amazing chemistry, all of these guys. Lena and Peter have something going, then Conleth comes in there, and then they have something going. It's just, it becomes just like, oh, I want to participate. What are you guys talking about?
Well, what's fun about this sequence is, aside from the Lannister family drama, in many ways, this trial serves as kind of a culmination of the whole series. You know, it was very important to David and Dan that the testimony from all of these witnesses, aside from a few key outright lies, is essentially true. Pretty much everything these witnesses are saying and all of these encounters they had with Tyrion over the past few seasons really happened, and the audience sort of serves as a jury in a way because they witnessed these things. Of course, the context is very damning, and they're certainly twisted to fit Cersei's assertion that Tyrion killed Joffrey. In my original draft, I had a lot more just blatantly false testimony, and the guys very wisely said, no, go back, comb over all of the previous episodes, find those moments.
I will hurt you for this.
Including this one. This is one example. In the original draft, Cersei didn't testify about this moment, and the guys urged me to put that in. And it's, I mean, look at her. Look at, I mean, and that's the key to this show. You know, she believes he did this. She believes everything she's saying.
I confronted him about his plans to put Joffrey on the front lines.
And Lena, you know, gives Cersei such incredible humanity. In the hands of a lesser actor, she would just be the villain and Tyrion would be the hero, but it's really much more complicated than that.
Tyrion said, and you will know the debt is paid. What debt?
I discovered he'd been keeping whores in the Tower of the Hand. I asked him to confine...
I also appreciated the fact that I personally was allowed to express through the scene not some elaborate camera moves and all that, but just very simple, understated way of telling the story and let the story drive the energy forward.
Absolutely.
The mood of how this scene is transforming itself into something bigger and bigger and bigger up until it has to reach its point of culmination when in due time we'll see it.
He said, perhaps you should speak more softly to me then. Monsters a day.
Yeah, and it was exhausting to shoot. It really gave me an appreciation for shows like Law and Order that do this every week, because the actors having to sit there and keep that energy up, the sheer amount of coverage that was required, it just blew my mind. You have to get every reaction from every character to every line. And it just requires, correct me if I'm wrong, so much more than than your standard scene, and it was as tiring and grueling on the cast and crew as anything we've shot.
Yeah, I think we've broken every record on the show up to that point in terms of how much footage we had shot.
Yeah,
each and every day.
Yeah,
which was tremendous. I mean, 3 cameras going at all times, 10 hours straight.
Yeah, and it should be said that the background actors really deserve a ton of credit. They, they do this. They certainly don't do it for the money. They do it for the love of being in the show and the experience of it, and they just gave it 100%.
I have to point out that Bryan jumped in there and he actually imitating everybody's voices so that background could react. You did great there, my brother.
Thank you. Yes, the audio of a lot of the audio of the reactions came from. I had a little session where I just got in the docket and did all of the cue lines for them, and sort of did a little mini and sort of directed them as to how they should react to certain lines. And
fantastic.
It was pretty fun.
Yeah. I wonder if they have that footage in some.
Oh, I don't know. I'm almost
stuff.
afraid to.
They should definitely put it in. It would be funny.
Now, this is one of my favorite scenes that I've had the pleasure of writing. I should say the idea for it came from a young man named Dave Hill, who is David and Dan's assistant and actually is a staff writer now for season 5. And he proposed this idea in the writer's room, the idea that Jaime would offer to renounce being part of the Kingsguard and take up his place at Casterly Rock in exchange for Tyrion to be given the option of joining the Night's Watch. And it just opened up the entire climax of the of the episode. The idea that Tyrion has this out and he chooses to let it go, and this huge sacrifice that Jaime makes that calls back to the first scene of the season between the two of them.
I have to say that when we were doing this scene, I remember we were looking at one another like, one take was better than the other. And then you go like, I don't know, it's embarrassment of riches.
That's right. It's like, which I know I would look and say, which one are you going to use? This is an impossible choice.
Yeah, this is where I'm leading to. So in edit process, I was so tempted to use stuff that, every single take offered something different. And Nikolaj was just nailing it left and right. I was like, what do we use here? It's all good.
Well, it turned out wonderfully, and it's also, speaking of courtroom tropes, it's sort of a riff on the judges and counsel in chamber scene.
You'll remove your white cloak immediately.
Again, the years of family history being what's really at its core, and that's that great moment where Jaime realizes that Tywin was banking on this. That of course Tywin couldn't be 100% sure that Jaime would give this kind of offer, but he thought he might, and he was ready with the answer. He's prepared for any contingency, and he really is the puppet master of this world.
And again, the realization that Tywin had him.
Yeah, he had him.
In just the look itself.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need the dialogue. You write it in the script and the stage direction, and you know that this cast and this director will convey that.
It was all Nikolaj. He just nailed it.
It's a great gift for me to know that this cast can do that I don't have to spell it out in dialogue if I don't want to.
Need to enter a formal plea for mercy and ask to be sent to the wall. Father's agreed to it.
And if anybody, Nikolaj certainly can. During the entire trial process, he hadn't uttered a single word, and yet when you cut to him, you understand what he's feeling, how he's feeling. And one of the looks he gives to Tyrion later on is like,
oh, yeah.
Don't say a word, don't. It's all silent communication.
Yeah, I remember, I think you got his coverage, I think it was one of the last bits of coverage you got, where you got all of his reactions and he just did the whole scene, and we were just kind of in awe. We were watching him just riveted.
Literally.
You could just put the camera on him and it would still be great.
Literally, it was 1.5 takes. Yeah. It was one take and then a pickup.
Yeah, amazing. At the end of the week, where everyone was just tired and he'd been standing the whole time. And here we come to, and this Ramin Djawadi is his I guess it's a cello. I'm not a musician, so I don't know. But this music cue here, coupled with this shot, just kills me every time.
I love it.
I have the pleasure of watching the show with some friends in a screening room every week, and everyone in the audience just groaned. They were just no, Shay. It was just heartbreaking.
State your name.
I have to say that Sibel killed this. She did great in this scene.
I swear.
Very, very tricky thing to pull off, because
yes,
you want to leave it deliberately vague as to what brought her here and what her point of view about this testimony is. How much of it was coerced, how much of it was forced, how much of it is because she wants revenge against Tyrion for him breaking her heart and sending her away. And really, the reality is it's all of those things. And she was really expert at balancing all of those different emotions.
Silence.
Oh man.
Continue.
She wanted revenge for her father, her mother.
For my money, this is Peter's best work on the show. I think he's just extraordinary in this scene.
He hated Joffrey. He hated the Queen. He hated you, my lord. He stole poison from the Grand Mesa's chamber.
Again, it's the start of a new phase for Tyrion. The old Tyrion the fun-loving, joyful Tyrion, the wit, he's kind of gone in a lot of ways after this scene. It's a big turning point, and it sets off the events that, of course, we're recording this now. The season's over, and everyone's seen the final episode. This sets up that horrible final murder of Shay. Their altercation that turns into a terrible strangulation that's just gut-wrenching, and
He broke the knight's arm.
It's something, the beauty of having the source material is you're able to lay the track for those moments over, 4 seasons. You write those early scenes where Shay and Tyrion are meeting, and then those scenes where they fall in love, and you're laying the track for this scene, and you're laying the track for the scene in 410. It's a great gift to have this source material so that, so that you can just layer all of that in, and the payoff is all the greater.
Oh, I love what he's doing here.
Oh, this shot.
What was great there too is that his working frame, it's just you compose it in such a way that you can feel that the balance is tipping.
He ordered me to call him my lion.
Yeah, it's as if he's trying to shield himself from her. Do you know the way the tension in his neck? It's as if the world is beating him down. And this.
Yeah.
Shay. Please don't.
It's his final plea, and then...
I am a whore.
Bam.
Remember?
And that's it. There's no going back.
That was before he married Sansa. After that, all he wanted was her. But she wouldn't let him in.
She did so good here. It's unbelievable. Like, she's very, very... She's measured, She's not going over the top. I mean, really.
Yeah, and Sibel, Sibel's wonderful, and she's pretty hard on herself, I think, as an actor. I think I don't think she knows just how great she is. And Sibel, if you're listening, we love you. And then,
Absolutely.
And there's that look.
Well, look at that look. Yes.
And, again, when I found out that I was going to get to adapt this scene from the book, which is one of the great scenes in the novel, I was just overjoyed, and it was a huge responsibility. And much of it is drawn straight from the book with a few alterations and touches from me, but it really is the speech he's wanted to give his entire life. He finally gets to tell them all what he really thinks.
There's something that happened here, which was pure accident, which was caught by our operator, David Morgan. When Tyrion, in just a little while from here, he's going to turn around and face the crowd. And David miraculously caught him and tracked around him to do a continuous shot. And it was so beautifully done. I think it's coming.
I did not kill Joffrey, but I wish that I had. Watching your vicious bastard die gave me more relief.
And it's coming up right about here. There.
Oh, and he caught. Oh, look at that.
Oh,
and that was just on the fly. Dave
it's
just
on the
caught
fly.
it. That's amazing.
He just caught it. Right. and I was like, oh, it just signified that moment and put a pin on it. It's like,
that's incredible. And you're right. And because there hasn't been a whole lot of camera movement in the scene, as you say, it really gives it that jolt, doesn't it? Oh, that's fascinating.
Right. And we only had 2 takes, and it just happened.
Amazing.
And there it is.
And here
Thank
it is.
you, David.
And ultimately, it all comes down to these two. It comes down to father and son, and it's very carefully scripted that the episode end with the two of them staring daggers at each other. And of course, brilliant director that you are, you honored that. You honored all these looks that were scripted. And
I mean, it's a huge standoff at the end.
Well,
it's like,
he'd rather die than give 1 inch to his father.
And the teeny smile.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what are you going to do now?
Yeah. And that's it. The episode really flies by.
Brilliant.
I feel like we left a lot of stuff
episode.
out, but it just flies by. But yeah, it's a joy, and it's one of my favorite episodes of the series. Certainly one of my favorites that I wrote. And
easily.
The experience again, Alik, I can't say it enough, but the experience of working with you on it was a sheer delight.
Thank you, Bryan. You know how I feel. I won't even say it.
It's true. We'll start blubbering here on the commentary track. No one wants to hear that. And all props to our whole cast, but certainly to Peter Dinklage. This really was a tour de force for him.
And this wonderful people that were involved.
Yes, this whole
crew,
the best crew in television, the best. across
Easily.
many countries. I'm Bryan Cogman, and thanks so much for listening.
And I'm Alik Sakharov. Thank you, guys.
Winter is coming, everybody.